Give us liberty or death!
Give us liberty or death!
Long live the revolution!
Long live the revolution!
Long live the republic!
In a working-class suburb of Paris, we will witness the birth of a revolution that will engulf the French monarchy and make the whole of Europe tremble.
All those who don't have the right to vote!
From 1789 to 1795, the French people would fight for rights that then seemed unthinkable.
All men are born and remain free and equal in rights.
Women and men risked everything to bring about democracy in their country.
Obviously, people now call us heroes. But at the time, we never said that.
Exceptional records provide a real understanding of how this revolution wiped out the old political regime in 1789 and then brought down the monarchy in 1792.
Riots were the reason we had the revolution and the destruction of our tyrants, and they brought us also...
Journalists Jean-Paul Marat and Camille Desmoulins, political leaders like Jacques Danton and Maximilien Robespierre relate what the country went through.
They're also upset with the prosecutions and the sentencing by the Revolutionary Tribunal. But I have a unique conviction for you. The destiny of a few men is not worth that of the homeland.
But revolution is always a merciless struggle. Many French men and women paid with their lives in this revolutionary period, swept away by the war or by the wind of terror that grips the country in 1794. This is the story of a revolution, one that would shape the destiny of the French and shake the history of the world. April 28, 1789, the Swiss Guards and the King's French Guards received the order to quell the riot that has broken out in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine in Paris.
On your knees. Go on.
No,
Go ahead.
don't do it!
Blind repression that would claim more than 300 victims.
Get out of here.
Days earlier, the Saint-Antoine district flared up when the operator of a wallpaper manufacturer, Réveillon, tried to lower workers' wages. With Paris starving and unemployment hitting the suburbs hard, the boss's provocation sparked fury among the workers. That day, in the streets of Saint-Antoine, soaked in the violence of the Royal Guard, we meet for the first time these Parisians expressing anger suppressed for too long. Jonas Le Bigon, a worker from Les Gobelins factory, bemoaning the fate of Parisian workers. And Gabrielle Pechloche, a humble washerwoman who must fight to survive and who lives with her son in the Faubourg Saint-Marcel south of Paris, as does Jonas Le Bigon.
It's over here, fellas. Over here.
Come here. Jonas is bringing in a casualty.
It's just tragic, that is.
Back in the Saint-Marcel district, the demonstrators are in shock.
Nostris nostrae. Amen.
What are you all crying for, you morons? They don't give a damn for your tears. They're heartless. They only understand one language. We won't take this lying down. We'll show them. No! There. Hold on. He's gone. Let's go, boys.
In this little inn, you can feel France is on the verge of explosion. The Faubourg Saint-Antoine echoes riots over food shortages that for months have been spreading through the kingdom from north to south.
Don't look, sweetheart.
But while France is racked by the effects of hunger and poverty, the king seems far more concerned by his summoning of the Estates General. Louis XVI intends to impose his authority on the country's nobility, who are challenging his power. In every province of the kingdom, the king has invited the three orders that make up society to elect delegates to the Estates General. The three orders are the nobility, the privileged order which monopolizes the most prestigious functions. The clergy, which, like the nobility, is exempt of all taxes. And the third estate, which includes the bourgeoisie, all these lawyers and merchants who pay the lion's share of taxes and who now demand a share of the power. As for the people, it will not be represented by delegates, but is nonetheless invited to tender its lists of grievances. Suddenly, peasant, worker, and third estate bourgeois bond together to denounce the country's inequalities. No longer will they stand being crushed by the privileges of the nobility and the clergy.
The king launched a process without imagining what it could be.
Jean-Paul Rabault Saint-Étienne is the third estate delegate for the city of Nîmes.
He convened the Estates General in January '89. He decreed that the lists of grievances would permit every citizen to participate in the process. What do folks do then? They take hold of this opportunity to express what they want. And what do they want? It's been centuries that the nation's been faced with laws that are arbitrary, that weigh heavily on the daily life and the wealth of the citizens. Citizens who, the same as you and me, are drowning because of taxes. Taxes that are not paid by those in control, the powerful, nobility, and the clergy. And folks want that to go.
In reality, Louis XVI convened the Estates General to force the nobility to accept a new tax he wants to levy. To win this showdown against the nobility, who dare to defy him, the king needs the bourgeoisie of the Third Estate, for whom he has doubled the number of delegates. But on May the 5th, when Louis XVI solemnly opens the Estates General, his strategy is turned against him. For the first time, the delegates of the bourgeoisie are in the majority and intend to take this chance to impose their demands. First among them is the rejection of the rule that stipulates votes must be taken by order. That is, one vote for the nobility, one for the clergy, and one for the Third Estate. On the contrary, the representatives of the bourgeoisie demand one vote per delegate, giving them the majority. And until they get satisfaction from the king, they will refuse to start work for several weeks.
Keep your hands off that rope. Mind your own business. That, sir, belongs to me. Did you move on? Give me that. Come on, it's mine.
Jonas Le Bigon, like many ordinary workers, doesn't believe that events in Versailles can change a thing for him. A worker at the Gobelin manufactory. He doesn't feel represented by the Third Estate bourgeoisie, whom he considers far too removed from his own daily difficulties.
Well, of course they've got to win. The Third Estate is on our side, with the people.
Ah, cut it out. Stop it, really. The king will never let them act freely.
Yeah, well, I say they'll succeed because they're right. We can't take more taxes.
Juste Coupigny is a well-known brewer from Saint-Marcel who, as a local notable, played a part in naming the Third Estate delegates.
For me, it's simple. With the taxes on wine, wood, or even on the sign out front, I can't make a living.
I don't know, honestly. No one's ever listened to us before, and there with our lists and our deputies, someone's gonna listen? No, he's right. All I know is that at Réveillon, they were quick to shoot us like we were rabbits. I'll never trust them.
But that's your problem. You never trust anybody. You never trust anybody.
Anyway, they won't get far without the priests. Am I right, Abbot? What's the clergy gonna do in all this?
Paradoxically, it is the clergy who overturn the balance of power in Versailles. After weeks of impasse, several delegates of the clergy choose to join the bourgeoisie in its revolt against the king. Suddenly, the delegates of the Third Estate are no longer alone. So on June 17, 1789, they take the unheard of decision to form a National Assembly representative of the French people. This power play pushes Louis XVI to take control of a situation that is getting out of hand. On June 20th, the king closes the Estates General Hall to prevent the new assembly from meeting.
We were just stupefied. For a brief time, no one knew what to do. And then Bailly, the deputy of Paris, proposed that we reassemble in the Jeu de Paume at Versailles. We were aware we were living an historical moment. All of a sudden, in this resonant hall, the voice of Mounier emerges distinctly, and he asks that each and every participant take an oath, never to separate, and to stay in session until the constitution of the realm was established.
This oath, in June 20th, 1789, in the Jeu de Paume, the royal tennis court, enters the annals of history. Revolutionary painter David captures the wind of the coming revolution and glorifies the National Assembly, born of the union between the Third Estate and the clergy. The delegates will not back down. So when 3 days later, on June 23rd, Louis XVI stakes everything on halting the rebellion, he'll be facing an unprecedented revolt in the history of the monarchy. The king may refuse to recognize the National Assembly, but when he leaves the room, nothing will happen as he has imagined.
We remained motionless in our seats, silent. That morning, all the delegates had received instructions to remain in the room. The Grand Master of Ceremonies of the king didn't know what to say. He ran to notify the king of the situation and came back to us, where he repeated the order of the king to disperse. And so Mirabeau, our exuberant colleague, overwhelmed by his passion, as always, he pronounced the famous words everyone now knows by heart. Tell those who have sent you that we are present by the will of the people, and that we won't leave this place till forced to by bayonets. We were as if petrified by our own courage.
Listen! Listen! They refuse to leave.
I don't believe it.
And then, that old fox Mirabeau, his face like a demon, answers de Brézé without any hesitation. Tell those who sent you that we're present by the will of the people, and we won't leave this place till forced to by bayonets!
Louis XVI is therefore forced to bow down to the union of the bourgeoisie and clergy. He officially recognizes the new National Assembly, to the delight of the people of Paris.
Guards, hey, have it. Come on, join
Come
us.
on, let's drink.
But the Parisians' hope is short-lived. By early July, Paris sees that the king only pretended to give in to better prepare his counterattack. Louis XVI suddenly musters 20,000 soldiers around Paris, including German and Swiss regiments, which settle on the Champ de Mars. There is an excitement in the gardens of the Palais Royal. A people's revolution is taking shape to defend the political revolution of the Estates General. And lawyer Camille Desmoulins plays a crucial role at this time.
On July 12th at Palais Royal, I was angry as a wasp. Worse, that anger was quickly becoming despair. And so I went for it. I spoke with my heart and I almost shouted, "Tonight, all the battalions, Swiss and German, will quit the Champ de Mars to cut our throats. There's only one solution. Run to seize arms and put on cockades so we know each other."
Immediately, in the Tuileries Garden and then Place Louis XV. A crowd gathers to express its anger. But the protest is immediately attacked by a regiment of German dragoons, who charge, sabers aloft. Fortunately for Parisians, on July the 12th, the regiments of French guards decide to defend Paris rather than their king. They violently repel a first assault by the German soldiers. That evening, the angry mob takes possession of the streets of the capital. Their target is these customs barriers that surround Paris and which levy a tax on all goods known as the octroi. At the Gobelin barrier, Jonas Le Bigon takes the lead in this dispute.
We're part of the movement. The barriers of Saint-Jacques and the Santé have already been burned. In my opinion, by tomorrow, there won't be one left. It's time they understood we want real change. Where do you think you're going?
I work there. I gotta pick up the registers.
Oh, well, sorry about that. You can go inform your taxman boss we're gonna burn it all.
Whoa, hold on. I agree with you, but if I go back without the registers, I'm gonna get screwed. It could cost me my job.
Yeah, but for the time being, the question's what they cost us. Every time we take merchandise into Paris, they bleed us dry.
It's not my fault, man.
Stop right there.
Where'd he go?
Come with us.
Go home now. Go on, go home. Go on home.
Athanase Lamoureux keeps the accounts for this octroi barrier, one of 57 in the capital. As someone who can read and count, Athanase is a humble cog in the Parisian administration.
You people are out of your minds. What will you have gained when the barrier burns down?
All right, let's go. Burn it down.
The next day, July the 13th, the popular revolution takes on several faces. Hunger riots at the Saint-Lazare compound, where people from the suburbs loot a rich monastery. Insurrection in Place Louis XV, where the mob tries to obtain disused arms from a royal warehouse. At the same time, at the Hôtel de Ville, the Paris City Hall, and Place de Grève, delegates of the Parisian bourgeoisie, steered by Jean-Baptiste Bailly, are founding the Paris Commune, which immediately recruits several thousand volunteers to form an armed municipal guard. Parisians have a date with history.
We won't be long. Thanks, Abbot.
In the early hours of July the 14th, 1789, the inhabitants of the capital have but one thought: take up arms and resist the royal troops.
I brought everything we found. There's at least one per person.
We don't have much time. Hurry.
While the faubourgs are getting organized, volunteers for the municipal guard head for Les Invalides, where they seize more than 30,000 rifles and many cannons. At the same time, the people of Saint-Antoine head to the Bastille fortress to obtain gunpowder. This royal prison is a symbol of the military power threatening the new Paris Commune and must urgently be disarmed. Thousands try to scale the walls that protect the impressive fortress. The prison governor, Delaunay, then opens fire on the crowd. Dozens of attackers are killed. But when the new Parisian guard, armed with cannons, comes to support the assailants, the balance of power shifts. The first enclosure is passed. Then they make an assault.
Obviously, people now call us heroes. But at the time, nobody said that. There were tailors and shoemakers and coopers, carpenters, everyone. And even priests in their cassocks. We didn't think twice about it, we just went. Once we're inside, it was tough. Quite a few guys didn't make it out. I was pretty sure I'd be among them. I bet you'll never guess who saved me. Athanase, remember him? The guy who wanted to save his stupid tax office. Well, he showed up.
I swear that I decided I would go home. After the thing with the office, I was furious. But I ran into Arsène Lecouvreur pulling a cannon 3 times his size, so of course I gave him a hand. All of a sudden, I was at the Bastille. And when the crowd started smashing through the doors, I went in with them. It was as if this rage I'd kept bottled up just erupted, and I just wasn't the same man. I wanted to get out, but I found myself in a corridor, and I couldn't find the exit. That's when I came upon Jonas. To describe the corridor, just horror. They'd been trapped like rats. It's a miracle we made it out.
After several hours of fierce fighting, Delaunay hoists the white flag. The crowd seizes the governor because he fired at the people. He is taken to the Place de Grève in front of the Hôtel de Ville, lynched and decapitated. His head is symbolically carried on a pike to signify that the people of Paris are now masters of the city, and this incipient revolution will not be stolen from them. This time, Louis XVI is forced to surrender. On July the 17th, 1789, the king comes to the Hôtel de Ville to symbolically receive the keys to the capital from the hands of the new mayor, Jean-Baptiste Bailly. This puts an end to absolute monarchy. The king will have to share power. France switches to a constitutional monarchy, symbolized by the new tricolor cockade that Bailly offers to the king. Blue and red, colors of Paris, flank the white, color of the French monarchy. But the king's capitulation does not appease the kingdom, which is suddenly seized by strong convulsions. People from the towns and countryside who counted for nothing in the political order of the monarchy suddenly seem to take their revenge. In Paris, people have decided to take the law into their own hands. The city's intendant, who embodies the abuses of the old system, is hanged from a street lamp in the Place de Grève, and his body is dismembered.
I don't agree with this violence or the killings. But the worst violence was the day they shot us down at Réveillon. The worst violence is the kind that requires our forced labor and to pay the priests. The worst violence is all the rights for the few and the duties for the others. That's the real violence.
In Versailles, the delegates of the 3 orders, including the nobility, form the new National Assembly, in charge of managing the country. Faced with the current people's revolt, the deputies feverishly discuss the measures to be adopted when, in the night of August the 4th, 1789, they come to an historic decision, as Jean-Paul Rabot Saint-Étienne relates.
A deputy of the nobility, Monsieur de Noailles, stood up to speak and said to us all, if one wants to re-establish order, one must destroy the cause of the disorder, and that cause is an unjust fiscal system. That is how we experienced an event in which in one night we saw the abolition of all their privileges. What a wonderful sight. To observe the nobility and the clergy waive one after the other all their ancestral hunting and fishing rights and all those obligations that crushed the country folk.
On August 4th, the privileges of the nobility and the clergy are abolished, and on August 26th, the Assembly adopts a declaration of the rights of man and of the citizen.
What does it say?
The representatives of the people of France, constituted as an assembly of the nation, have hereby resolved to present in a solemn declaration the sacred, natural, and inalienable rights of man. Article number 1. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights.
Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Article 2 of the Declaration states that these natural, inalienable rights are freedom, property, security, and resistance to oppression. The People's Revolution has just turned into a citizens' democratic revolution. Those who never mattered suddenly have the feeling that they exist for the first time.
Safety and resistance against oppression.
For this citizens' revolution, Paris is a laboratory.
Delivery of these rights to all citizens and all people.
In the capital, a system of direct democracy is being sketched out. The Commune establishes 48 local assemblies from the division established at the Estates General. Saint-Marcel, Saint-Antoine, Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Each of these new political districts has its own battalion of the city's armed force, which is now known as the National Guard. Led by the Marquis de Lafayette, deputy from the nobility, who defends the revolution while remaining faithful to the king. In the Faubourg Saint-Marcel, brewer Juste Coupigny, ever involved in life on the banks of the Bièvre, naturally took the reins of the Gobelin district. These first meetings raise a crucial question. Who has the right to vote? Only the richest, on the model of the States General, or all French citizens?
I'm afraid there's probably no way that we can do that.
Gabrielle, what are you doing here? You think you're gonna vote?
Stick me with one too. Just mind your own business.
All right.
That's right. What business is it of yours?
Keep an eye on your pins, Bellavoine. If I prick you, you'll remember it.
And when we heard the cry of the people who wanted more liberty and more bread, our comrades were murdered capturing the Bastille.
That's right.
We have paid with our blood. And we think this blood money gives us the right to vote, even if we don't have the means to pay a poll tax.
And you've got to understand that it's not right.
You want the right to vote. You want the right to vote. That's absolutely stupid.
Athanase, come on.
Citizen Lamoureux.
Citizen Lamoureux. I obviously agree that an honest man like you should be able to vote in the district. But I mean, if you don't put the limit of some tax, think of all those folks who have neither home nor hearth, and God knows there's many of them, who will have the same right.
No, so what? Just because we're poor doesn't mean we're dumb.
What about the National Guard? You have to pay 4 golden louis to become a member. That means those of us who are in combat aren't permitted to vote, nor belong to the Guard? That's unacceptable!
Please, quiet, please. Let me speak. After the victory that we were all responsible for, I thought...
We? I'm not sure I heard you. Where were you, Coupigny, when we captured the Bastille? Where were you when I pulled this musket off a Swiss guard who tried to kill me with it, eh? I'm warning you, Coupigny.
No.
If you want the musket, you'll have to take it from me.
But I've got nothing against you, Jonas.
Citizen Le Bigon.
Yes, Citizen Le Bigon. But we can't give arms to anyone who wants
I say
one.
the battle is not yet over. Do you understand that?
He's right. Listen to the
For Parisians, democracy is a tough learning curve. Who decides? Who has the right to bear arms? Stormy debates whose verdicts were reported to the National Assembly, which would give its ruling at the end of the process.
What about me? Me too, I'm also against the condition of the poll tax. And I say we have to have suffrage for all. But I mean suffrage that's fully universal, where women are able to vote too. Just because we wear skirts doesn't mean we can't think. I am Gabrielle Pécheloche. I was also at the Bastille, and that gives me the right to vote. Just like you.
Hey, a washerwoman. Now I've seen everything.
What of it? What skins it off your nose?
You're right. Yeah, she's right.
And why not let my donkey vote?
That's enough.
All right.
That's Gabrielle from the neighborhood. You must know her.
Ah, with that temperament, I would have remembered.
Everybody has the right to vote.
All right. Now that everyone has spoken, let's vote. We propose the vote subject to a male poll tax and the vote with universal male suffrage.
Hey, what about us?
Oh, yeah. And a suffrage open to all women and men. But of course, for today, those able to vote under the currently applicable rules will be citizens whose tax has been paid. Calm down now, or I request the evacuation of those not permitted to vote.
How dare you!
But that's just fraud! You gotta be kidding!
Selective voting, that is limited to men who've paid the poll tax, is adopted by a majority of votes.
I have an important announcement to make. Given the enthusiasm of volunteers to join the National Guard, the district, on the proposition of citizen Bouvreuil...
Abbot Bouvreuil.
Of Abbot Bouvreuil here before you, has made the decision that follows. The district will provide arms and uniforms for men lacking the means to buy their own.
We won, I think. Why dream? After all, we had no chance of winning the right to vote. Hang on to our weapons. That wasn't real combat.
If we have the right to fight, then we also have the right to vote. It can't be separated. Now we're waiting for the decision of the other districts and then what the Assembly decides afterwards. What's clear is if we can't vote, well, then the others will be able to throw us out of the Guard whenever they want.
Well, no, actually, I'm not happy. Like always, no one cares about the women. But we're the ones who fight every day to find bread, and let me tell you, it's getting harder and harder. We're all starving while the rich are all stuffing themselves.
Every citizen may speak, write, and print with freedom, reads the Declaration of the Rights of Man, Article 11. No more royal censorship and pamphlets posted secretly at night. The newspapers multiply, the first tangible proof of societal change. Opinions which, in a kingdom where the majority cannot read, are often shared aloud. Most radical and before long the most popular revolutionary journalist is Jean-Paul Marat, who in September starts publishing L'Ami du Peuple, the friend of the people. As for lawyer Camille Desmoulins, his passion for the new press leads him too to change profession.
The Palais Royal, the garden of the Palais Royal, was at the time quite an extraordinary sight. It's a hotbed of patriotism. You don't ask permission to be able to speak of some chairman or to dawdle 2 hours till it's your turn. If you want to speak, you stand on a chair. And if you're applauded, then you rewrite your speech to be published. And if you're shouted down, you go away. There was, however, the real presence of a terrible threat facing the new breeze of liberty, the veto of Louis XVI. Because the king did not want to sign the abolition of the privileges, nor the Declaration of Human Rights. And in my opinion, we underestimated how this veto was disastrous. Because the people had the feeling someone was trying to rob their victory. And in September, the tension was at its peak. And I am proud to say it was because of an article in the newspaper written by Gorsias, that Paris rose in revolt once more.
When, on October 1st, 1789, a great banquet is held in Versailles in honor of troops freshly arrived from Flanders, journalist Gorsias, dumbfounded by what he sees, prints his report the very next day. An article that spreads through the city like wildfire.
The hall was illuminated as if it were for one more superb festivity. The most beautiful women of the court and of the town formed a most attractive tableau. It was enchanting. During the dinner, the noble assembly participated in many
toasts.
Yeah, I can read fine, thank you. Many toasts to the Queen, to the King, to Monseigneur the Dauphin, to the royal family as a whole.
I'm so glad to hear it. Sounds like they're having a lot of fun at the chateau, huh?
Well, like I said, there's no way we can trust them.
Some officers, when pouring wine for their soldiers, told them, "We must drink to the health of the king, our master, and recognize no one else." And at one point, an officer shouted to the assembly, "Down with cockades of color."
Huh? No.
Let each man don the black cockade of the Queen.
God.
The only one to recognize.
That's scandalous.
Somebody has to react to that.
You're right. Somebody has to do something.
Yeah, but what?
Now you see how these people despise us. It's obvious.
October 5th, 4 days after the Versailles banquet, thousands of women, angry at bread shortages in Paris, gather in the square at the Hôtel de Ville. Officials of the Paris Commune see this as a golden opportunity. What if the women were to march in procession to Versailles? to demand from the king not only bread, but also his signature on the edicts abolishing privilege.
It was a very good idea. It was too dangerous for us to send men they'd be shot at. So we got organized. And we mobilized all the women in the area by telling them, are we going to keep watching our kids die from hunger while all those others stuff themselves at their sumptuous balls? We were all starving. Nothing would prevent us.
Hundreds of women join the march. The Paris Commune sends the National Guard to accompany them and forces its commander, General Lafayette, to go to Versailles too, despite his reticence. After several hours of walking, a delegation is received by the king, who makes vague promises, not enough for the women of Paris. They take over the National Assembly, then lay siege to the palace all night. In the early morning, the crowd invades the Queen's apartments. Several bodyguards are killed and decapitated. The protesters issue a new demand, that the royal family return to Paris. General Lafayette sees that the situation could degenerate at any moment. He therefore persuades the Queen and the King that leaving Versailles is their only choice. And while a salvo of cannons salutes the Parisians' victory, the royal family must return to the capital. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette move into the former Tuileries Palace. A dilapidated palace, which, days later, would also host the National Assembly in the Salle du Manège, its riding hall. But that autumn, 1789, despite victory in Versailles, the people of the Faubourg face several disappointments. In the Salle du Manège, the Assembly adopts a voting system limited to working men who pay taxes. Despite the fight by some progressives, like the deputy from Arras, Maximilien Robespierre.
How are we able to pretend that the nation is sovereign when the majority of the individuals that make it up are missing all the political rights that justify and constitute that sovereignty? If a minority is sovereign and the majority stays submissive, then we are facing a new aristocracy. And this aristocracy is the worst possible thing, as it is the aristocracy of the rich.
Worse, to guard against the people's anger, the Assembly also decrees martial law. No one will be allowed to bear weapons. And above all, a red flag over the town hall will indicate that any gathering is prohibited on pain of immediate death. A decision that appalls journalist Jean-Paul Marat.
They invented a red flag supposed to be used to prohibit any demonstrations. Too dangerous, they said. What made them think that a piece of red cloth that was raised in Paris would dampen the cry of the people? Riots were the reason we had the revolution and the destruction of our tyrants, and they brought us also the humbling of the elite, the rise of common folk, and the return of liberty. And that martial law that outlawed any demonstrations was in the end proposed by an enemy of the common good.
The majority of the priests choose to support the changes at work in the country, as in the Parisian parish of Saint-Marcel.
Thank you.
Jean Bouvreuil thinks that this revolution of the poorest and most excluded chimes more than ever with Christianity.
Thanks for your help.
In this spring of 1790, the most ardent Parisian revolutionaries even want their church to spiritually support their fight.
Lord, bestow your blessing on this flag of the section of the Gobelins, and on the men who carry it, because they merely defended themselves when despotism sought to crush them. Men who are perverse and ambitious, Who?
Celebrate the Holy Sacrament for a piece of cloth. That is blasphemy.
I bless you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Oh yeah, the revolution. A revolution, right, yeah. But a revolution would be a sin, believe me. Wake up already! You're worshipping a flag. Medals of the Bastille. Cheap pins and badges instead of your sovereign or your god. Hey, repent now. And if you stop your ceremonies and your blasphemies, your revolutionary mumbo-jumbo, then why, our Father will pardon you! Don't touch me! Demons. Vandals.
You seeing which direction it's moving? To be honest, I wondered what my place is in this National Guard. Making sure that martial law is respected? Having to obey guys like Coupigny and the Assembly that refuses our right to vote? That's not why I marched on the Bastille. However, to stay in this battalion is to respect the path that we've traveled upon.
I can see full well that Jonas is unhappy in this role, but I keep saying to stay. We went through plenty of crap to get accepted. If he gives up now, there's no better way to let Coupigny and the others decide in our place. If we abandon the unit, then they'll be the only ones to bear the arms.
No, I want to believe. We won our revolution. Now we're changing our lives.
July 1790. France celebrates the first anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. On the Champ de Mars in Paris, a great ceremony is in preparation to celebrate concord. Concord between the orders, between the Assembly and the King, between the people and its new representatives. And on July 14th, 100,000 spectators jostle around the Hôtel de la Patrie, the altar of the homeland, to honor the new constitutional monarchy, to the sound of a Te Deum marking the union of the Catholic Church, the Revolution, and the King. The first national holiday on July 14th ends with incredible illumination on the vast promenade known as the Champs-Élysées. But the following months would show that the Concord of July 1790 is nothing more than a facade. Very soon, serious cracks threatened the edifice constructed over the past year. The first rift comes in November 1790, when the Assembly demands that each member of the clergy swear an oath of loyalty to the Revolution and agrees to a new organization of the Church of France, notably with bishops being directly elected by the people. The Catholics are torn between those who accept, as in Paris, and those who refuse, soon known as refractory priests, very numerous in the southern and western provinces of the country.
I swear to watch over the faithful in the parish with which I've been entrusted, to be loyal to the nation, the law, and the crown, and to uphold, using all my power, the constitution decreed by the Assembly and accepted by the King. For me, the oath's perfectly in line with Scripture, and I was happy to sign it. I'd already expressed my agreement with the Assembly when it had nationalized the property of the Church in 1789. I thought it was normal the church participate in this new effort of the community to build a new country, more just, more fraternal. In our parishes, like here in Paris, that was obvious for many priests, but I know that in our provinces, some of my brothers were unable to understand. They thought the intention of the oath was to control our religion. It took epic proportions that were terrible, horrible. People kill, they kill all over again in France in the name of God.
It's almost a war of religion, whether in Montauban or Nîmes, opposing refractory Catholics and revolutionary Protestants, a war in which several hundred die. In Avignon, they fight and even die in the churches. Churches where the voice of the Pope soon resounds, denouncing the revolutionary oath in March 1791 and asking all of the country's clergy to retract or be excommunicated. This stance exasperates the Parisians, who symbolically burn the effigy of the Pope in the gardens of the Palais Royal. But on the priest's side, the papal threat is causing trouble.
Ever since the Pope said we must retract, I don't know what I should do. In fact, I'm lost. I am lost.
A second rift, much more serious, breaks out in June 1791, when Parisians are stunned by the news that King Louis XVI and his family attempted to flee the country to join the nobles in exile and have been arrested in Varennes. A thunderclap that resounds around the country.
No, it's impossible. Our beloved king would never abandon us that way. It's a misunderstanding.
I'm disgusted. Disgusted. If you ask me, I'm not surprised.
No, it has to be a mistake. I'm sure that one day we'll learn the whole truth.
The royal couple is escorted to Paris in glacial silence. People in the capital cannot forgive the king's betrayal. Like the journalist, Jean-Paul Marat.
And so he's taken back to our Paris. That majestic swindler, a traitor, a conspirator. The flight of the family of the king had been prepared for a long time by the traitors of the National Assembly, whom the king had promised all the riches of the state. In that class, I set nearly all the representatives of the people, all those functionaries and public servants who we trusted with the defense of our rights and our liberty and our person, and who want to turn against us our very own arms.
Several weeks later, this rift between the people and their king would have painful consequences in Paris. Though certain political leaders were dreaming of an end to the revolution this year, 1791, a tragedy would change the course of events. It all starts with the clubs that bring together revolutionary leaders by affinity to influence debates in the assembly. Most radical is the Cordeliers Club, which brings together Parisian activists such as Marat and Desmoulins. Most famous is the Jacobin Club, a magnet for early revolutionaries, from the most moderate like Lafayette to the most uncompromising like Robespierre. And when the Cordeliers demand that Louis XVI abdicate, it's as if an infernal machine whirs into motion.
For me, the same as for Marat, the flight of the king had revealed something.
Jacques Danton, then member of the Cordeliers, would play a leading role over the following months.
It was impossible to continue with such hypocrisy, a constitutional monarchy. A voice had to come forth to say, it's possible to imagine another system. With no king, and with the people for unique guide. Its name is the Republic. So I was pretty much favorable to the petition written by the journalist Robert, and that was adopted in my absence by the Club of the Cordeliers. But I ought to have dissuaded them from engaging in this adventure, and I figured out too late what would happen.
I openly opposed that petition defended by Danton at the Jacobins. I had a bad feeling that the enemies of liberty had long been seeking an occasion to attack the people. And it was the word republic that gave them the pretext that they wanted. Danton and Marat had to leave Paris to avoid being arrested. Desmoulins had to hide. I had given them fair warning. As for those citizens who in all good faith had followed them during that terrible day, they would pay with their blood. I am sorry to have to say it, but with honest men like General Lafayette, the people is a monster, always ready to devour them, unless they're held in chains, and every so often shot down.
It was a bit of fun. Thousands of us come to the Champ de Mars to sign the petition of the Cordeliers. And the abdication of the king, I was for it. We didn't have our weapons. It was like a picnic with the family. It was raining a little, but we danced and we sang. At some point, they raised the red flag on the Hotel de Ville to signal that demonstrations were illegal. We didn't know. We were too far away. And then they fired without warning. It was Lafayette and the National Guard. Citizens same as us. Just citizens. Killing other citizens.
July 17th, 1791, on the Champ de Mars, barely 2 years after the storming of the Bastille, 52 people, including 1 woman and 1 child, are mown down by the National Guard on the orders of General Lafayette. Hundreds of Parisians are wounded by those meant to protect them. In the Parisian sections, the shock is huge. The date of July 17th, 1791 is a turning point, and many Parisians would want rid of this constitutional monarchy that they're being sold at gunpoint.
That day I decided to quit the battalion. I'll always be on the side of the people and not on the side of guns that shoot at the people. They want to rob our revolution. We won't let that happen.
Spring 1792, in the Saint-Marcel district of Paris, life seems for an instant more important than the political events that have been shaking the country violently since 1789. On Adina's and Gabrielle's wedding day, we want to believe in a better tomorrow.
I would like it if you would block your ears to the roar of discord, and if you'd open your eyes before this young man and this woman who have just joined together before us. Adina Lamoureux and Gabrielle Pechloche.
Bravo! Wonderful.
But in reality, the course of the French Revolution has just changed.
Come and look, the soldiers are marching out.
The French are about to experience both a miracle of democracy and one of the bloodiest periods in their history. April 1792. France has just embarked on a war with the Austro-Hungarian Empire that will last many years. Louis XVI has pushed to have France declare war on Francis II of Austria, nephew of Queen Marie Antoinette. In actual fact, the king hopes that revolutionary France will be beaten and his power as absolute monarch of the country restored. Deputies are aware of the king's double dealing, but in a calculation that would prove devastating, the members of parliament still vote for war, naively convinced that a victory against Austria and Prussia would strengthen the revolution. The country is suddenly frozen by fear.
Ah, that warms the cockles.
Only Jean-Jean, a carefree youth, dreams of heroism. Gabrielle's son is a child of this revolution that he can only imagine winning.
Hey, look at Ferdinand.
You know he's got 5 kids, Ferdinand?
Hey, look at what they gave me.
You like it?
Yeah.
You want me to put it on?
Mm-hmm. They're leaving now.
Right from the first weeks of combat, hopes of victory are dashed and replaced by panic. The French army racks up defeats, destabilized by the exile of officers from the aristocracy. The Prussian armies cross borders and advance on Lille, and soon Paris. In these troubled hours, the cartoonists have a field day, producing scores of humiliating caricatures of the king and queen. In this spring of 1792, mistrust of the king would reach a startling level that could only lead to further insurrection. The first warning shot comes on June 20th, 1792, when the sections from Saint-Antoine and Saint-Marcel band together to peacefully invade the National Assembly, convening in the Tuileries Palace.
The 20th of June will always be one of the greatest memories ever. With the folks from Faubourg Saint-Antoine, we invaded the Salle du Manège. There where the assembly sits. It was a real farandole, like with drums, and we issued an ultimatum to these deputies who chickened out.
What we wanted was very clear. We just demanded the destitution of the king, who was a traitor, to allow into the National Guard those citizens they call passive, in their jargon, and the election of a convention that would replace the Assembly of Fools.
But the deputies didn't care what we wanted, of course. So then we just occupied the palace. We even forced Louis to wear a liberty cap. We put a good scare into all those cowards who sent us to war to die.
Once inside the palace, the protesters get the better of the soldiers and manage to reach the king. Louis XVI, manhandled, is forced to wear the Phrygian cap, new symbol of the revolution. Inspired by ancient Rome, it was used to denote emancipated slaves. That day, in the salons of the Palais Royal, a new character arrives on the Parisian political scene, the sans-culotte. This activist from the sections, craftsman or shopkeeper, who wears pants instead of the breeches of the nobility. Red cap jammed firmly on his head and weapon in hand, he's a real character who has just for the first time stolen a march on his king. But on June 20th, 1792, Louis XVI still doesn't realize that this violent intrusion is just a warning. Many are keen to see the revolution continue, like the journalist Jean-Paul Marat.
Those whom I call the century's luckiest, all those that live so easily off the public teat, citizens who are timid. There is only one thing they're afraid of: riots by the populace. Since they will disrupt the order of things, riots will menace their privileges. Therefore, they would like the people to be pretty unconscious of their misery. But faced with tyranny, the people always revolt.
Several weeks later, in July 1792, the tension in Paris is at its height. The homeland is in danger, proclaims the National Assembly, and thousands of volunteers flock to sign up and defend their country. To save Paris, the Assembly must appeal to volunteers from every province of the kingdom. Volunteers who, barely arrived in the capital, add to the confusion, especially those from Marseille. The Marseillais are all the more impressive as they now march to a patriotic song composed by a young officer, Rouget de Lille. That summer of 1792, this war song for the Army of the Rhine becomes the song of the Marseillaise. Arise, children of the homeland, the day of glory has arrived. Against us, tyranny's bloody standard is raised. To arms, citizens, form your battalions, proclaims a text that becomes a revolutionary hymn sung all over the country, known as La Marseillaise. And in these times of high tension, it takes but a glimmer to ignite the Parisian sections. It's a manifesto, signed by the Duke of Brunswick, that sparks things off on August the 3rd. The head of the Prussian armies threatens the French with the total destruction of Paris should Louis XVI come to harm. Such blackmail is seen in the sections as proof positive of the king's treachery.
We've got no rifles there.
Don't worry, us washerwomen will be going too.
I don't know, friend, but I'm afraid. Listen, if all of us go, we can do it.
47 of 48 sections immediately vote for a motion demanding that Louis XVI be deposed. But turning word into deed proves hard. Who takes up arms against his king?
It's not in our interest to add to the anarchy around us. I would ask you all to keep your calm.
I'm from the 1520.
Ah, all right.
I represent the 1520. I'm here to tell you we voted for insurrection.
In the Gobelin section, which takes in volunteers from Brittany, leader Jacques Coupigny has a decision to make as the Faubourg Saint-Antoine section, the 1520, has decided to walk through the Tuileries.
As the leader of our district, we do understand your decision. But the battalion will stay in its district.
No! How dare you! Hold on a minute. As the captain of the battalion, I inform you that the men want to go to the Tuileries.
That's right! Hurry!
Wait, just a second. Since when does a captain decide for the section?
What's the importance when our homeland's in danger and the king is a traitor? Huh? The section voted his ouster. Yeah! Now it's time to do what we said.
We're with him! Come on! He's big for us! Let's fight!
You're not making sense. You'll all be killed.
Are you threatening us?
Of course I'm not threatening. You'll be massacred by the king's soldiers. And remember that the Prussians promised to leave no wall standing in Paris if something happened to our monarch.
Please, quiet, please, quiet, please, quiet, please. After all, Citizen Coupigny is not completely wrong. We could very well be massacred. Thank you, citizens, but I'm afraid we're not nearly strong enough. We got to cross the Seine and the bridges are well guarded. This is suicide. This will end like at the Champ de Mars.
Hold on there, just listen. I've been at the section of the Theatre of France. They've just got an estimate comparing the forces established by the Commune of Paris. If all the sections and all the provincials march as one, the king's soldiers won't be able to resist. It's a unique opportunity for us. If we beat them, they won't be able to refuse us the right to vote. The Commune will pass suffrage for all. All across the city, they're organizing for an insurrection. Well, I say the Gobelins must take part in it. Let's move out! Give us liberty or give us death!
In a few days, a secret committee that aims to seize power in the city is set up between the Parisian sections. And at daybreak, on August 10th, 1792, the Liberty Bell rings. Early that morning, at the Hôtel de Ville, Paris City Hall, the Paris Commune, established in 1789, is overthrown. It is replaced by an insurrectionary commune headed by section delegates. Thousands of sans-culottes and Marseillais and Breton volunteers flock to the royal palace.
The palace of the king was guarded by the Swiss, as we call them. At the beginning, they were friendly with us, but that was quickly replaced by lead. It came from all sides.
While the Swiss guards try to avoid confrontation, the nobles, who have decided to defend the king to the bitter end, open fire from the roofs and windows, mowing down dozens of demonstrators. An extremely violent clash has begun.
There were too many men from Marseille and Brittany down, plus all our comrades of the sections. So obviously our guys wanted revenge. They pursued the Swiss one by one through the palace. Vengeance! That's what you heard. They were all massacred.
When the shooting starts, the king and his family take refuge in the grounds of the National Assembly. And when the sans-culottes invade the Salle du Manège, Louis XVI realizes the game is up.
The power is the king's no more. It's the people's. It's ours.
August 10th, 1792. The victory of the insurrectionary Paris Commune is total.
Article 1. French people are invited to form a national convention.
Long live the Commune! Long live the Commune!
Article 2. The king is temporarily suspended from his functions until the convention has the chance to pronounce its measures it considers fit for adoption.
Long live the Commune! Long live the Commune!
Article 3. The Assembly declares that in the future, and for the upcoming convention, every citizen aged 25 or older and able to live from his work's wages will have the right to vote in all equality and to take part in primaries.
Not only is the king relieved of his duties, but the National Assembly is dissolved to be replaced by a national convention elected by universal male suffrage, as demanded by the Paris sections. The Paris Commune, new political player on the scene, demands and obtains custody of Louis XVI. On August 13th, the king and his family are transferred to the Temple prison, where they must await their fate. A few days later, During an impressive ceremony in front of the Tuileries Palace, the people of Paris celebrate their victory by honoring the hundreds of victims of that day, August 10th. But in a pattern engraved since 1789, defeat always follows victory, and fear follows hope when on September 2nd, 1792, the city of Verdun falls to the Austrians, who are closing dangerously on Paris. Suddenly, irrational anxiety grips the sans-culottes. They worried that the nobles and refractory priests in the capital's prisons could ally themselves with the Austrians.
The People's Tribunal accuses you of conspiring against the revolution and to have exploited the troubles caused by foreign powers to sow discord in our homeland. You're a traitor to your nation.
In Saint-Firmin, as in every Paris prison, justice is summary, improvised.
You idiots! The armies of Europe will massacre you. I prefer walking in the other life rather than persisting in this one with dogs like you.
That's a confession. Our path is clear. I declare you guilty as charged. You'll be executed right now.
Let's go. The Lord's shepherd shall not want him.
In Saint-Firmin, Jonas Le Bigon participates in this bloody justice.
This is what will happen to all conspirators and all enemies of the revolution.
In 3 days, 2,000 people are executed in the prisons of Paris. Jonas and the sans-culottes will now have to live with the memory of these men, victims of a panic that turned deadly.
The rage of those September days was because of all that happened before. We were driven by something more powerful than my morals, or your morals. Folks were afraid there'd be no more revolution if the Prussians won the war. So the counter-revolutionaries would blow it all up if we let them do it. There are those who say it was Danton and Desmoulins who were responsible. There are others who say it was Marat who was behind it all. If you want the real truth, no one gave us any orders. Wait, we were afraid that we would lose it all. That's it.
Sometimes miracles change the course of history. That's what happens to France a few days later. In Valmy, September 20th, 1792, against all the odds, the revolutionary armies succeed in routing the Prussians. Galvanized by this unhoped-for victory, on September 21st, the new National Convention officially decrees the abolition of the monarchy in France. And the next day, September 22nd, 1792, the convention decides that all of the country's official acts will now be dated from year one of the French Republic. The Republic requires representation, so the revolutionary imagination again draws from the well of ancient art. A Roman goddess who represents the people's newfound liberty. A woman sporting a Phrygian cap, whom an Occitan song soon calls Marianne. The goddess Marianne, incarnation of the Republic, gradually becomes the national emblem. But what room is there in this new Republican regime for Louis Capet, deposed former king, prisoner in the temple? Must he now be tried in court? An issue that keeps the political class grumbling for weeks in this autumn of 1792. One that sees a clash of hardline points of view, such as that of the new deputy of Paris, Maximilien Robespierre.
For me, to put Louis before a tribunal which would debate the culpability or the innocence of the ex-king would have been a scandal. The proper trial of the king was the insurrection of August 10th. His judgment was the end of the monarchy. Actually, to put him on trial would be calling into question the very concept of revolution. Therefore, we decided that it would be the convention in its wisdom which would decide what to do with Louis Capet, and with one of two choices possible. Should he live or no?
At the convention, Louis Capet witnesses his indictment by the deputies. To the question, is he guilty of conspiracy against the nation? 687 out of 749 MPs vote yes. But what should be the sentence? Opinions are divided.
From my point of view, there was but one possible answer. It required that Louis must die. To carve into the hearts of all an indispensable contempt for royalty, Louis's death would capture the focus of the king's last supporters.
Like Robespierre, the new deputies Danton, Desmoulins, Marat, and the painter David vote for the death of the former king, as does a small majority of 387 MPs. A guillotine is installed on the old Place Louis XV, soon to become Place de la Concorde. And on January 21st, 1793, at 10:22 a.m., Louis Capet, former King of France, is executed. The news travels throughout Europe like a thunderclap. The monarchies of England, the Netherlands, Spain and Portugal join with Austria and Prussia in their war against this republic that dared to murder its monarch. This dangerous worsening of the war would suddenly heighten the political tensions within the National Convention. Since the king's execution, a rift divides the deputies. On the right wing, the Girondins, a reference to the department of origin of some of them, with Brissot, Roland, and Rabou-Saint-Étienne, who defended the king and who are hostile to the power of the Paris Commune. On the left wing, the Montagnards, a reference to their lofty perch in the assembly room, with Marat, Danton, and Robespierre, who rely on the popular sections of Paris and who do not hesitate to violently denounce their adversaries.
In just a few weeks, all masks were off. It came to our attention after several losses by our military that there was a conspiracy to restore the monarchy in France. The conspiracy had accomplices among our colleagues in Parliament. So then I proceeded to accuse them before the convention openly, because I had to denounce the aristocratic system they wanted to bring back, and that is defended today by those Girondins clustered around Brissot, de Roland, and de Rabou-Saint-Étienne. They did all they could to prevent the revolution of August 10th, then did whatever they could to diminish the power of the Commune of Paris. Then they were all opposed to putting the king in prison, and then they fought against the execution of Louis Capet. How could we not react with violence faced with such treachery? Shake off all the lethargy in which we sleep and crush all our enemies.
In this atmosphere of great political tension, Paris is trialing a new democracy, for the first time using universal male suffrage to renew the heads of sections. Revolutionary France is, more than ever, ahead of its time.
So who did you vote for? Lamoureux. I wasn't going to vote for that fossil Coupigny. I kind of like Coupigny. He's not a bad guy.
We have now come to the end of our very first vote with suffrage for all. Our section that used to be the section of the Gobelins and is now the section of Finistère has a new president, Athanase Lamoureux.
Almost 4 years on from the storming of the Bastille in 1789, the humblest Parisian workers feel they're finally taking revenge. In the Gobelins, Athanase Lamoureux's victory embodies this shift in the Paris sections. More than ever, political leaders have to deal with this new people power.
We're now going to have the pleasure of hearing two representatives of the convention, Jean-Bon Saint-André and the artist David.
They have a message. They have a message. Our homeland is in danger.
Citizens, the army of Prussia is close to Paris. is going to require the mobilization, quick and massive, of all of us. If we are to defend ourselves against those despots who sworn to bend us to their...
We're ready. But what do we do about the enemies within?
I don't follow.
I'm speaking of all those who continue to conspire against the Republic inside our homeland. Who will assume the responsibility of judging them, to incapacitate them? I say we need a tribunal for the revolution, right?
Yeah, I agree. The danger comes from within.
Defend our liberty! Wait, we haven't made it one of the first priorities of the convention.
So, who can you count on then? On these folks, the poor, guys like this one, or on him, or on me? As usual, we're left to do the dirty work.
Listen to me. Right now, it's urgent, very urgent
I think that we've all grasped the urgency of the situation. But the section will transmit to the convention its demand officially asking for the creation of a tribunal of the revolution. What we really had to do was avoid another event like in September. Yeah, we have to see that our enemies get punished, but by the people as a whole, not by some poor guys who were there by accident. Jonas, he never wanted to say what happened at Saint-Firmin. I found out about it nonetheless.
When several sections demand that a revolutionary tribunal be created, opposition grows within the National Convention, where the Montagnard deputy, Georges-Jacques Danton, relays the Parisians' demands.
During that famous session of the convention, and though the issue of the Tribunal of the Revolution was on everyone's mind, I realized we were going on our separate ways without discussing the question. That was impossible. The sections of Paris required their creation. So I took the floor, out of turn, to force the convention to take a position. I declared, a bit theatrically, I command every loyal citizen to remain at his post. It is important to put into place judicial tools that punish the counter-revolutionaries, while making sure a tribunal replaces the chaotic vengeance of the people. I even added, let us be terrifying, so that the people do not have to be.
A revolutionary tribunal is finally set up in March 1793 to judge those who challenge the revolution and who are seen as enemies of the interior. This court will be assisted in every section of Paris and in every municipality in the country by a committee of surveillance charged with controlling the citizens. In the Finistère section, Jonas Le Bigon has been appointed to head the Revolutionary Committee. The atmosphere now is not really the same, and everyone is accountable.
You're no longer head of the district. We just chose you to represent us in the Commune of Paris. And you vote to unblock the price of meat. You believe that represents the opinion of the Finistère section?
Well, yeah, it's what I thought.
Perfect. Great. He's just been nominated, and the representative is already turning into a little despot who thinks he owns the power that the people handed him.
But then for each vote, I first have to come and ask for a vote here, is that it? Yeah. Well, I hope you're prepared to sit in a permanent session.
But it's already like that.
Assembly's permanently sitting. Representatives at your orders. Is that what you want?
It's in those assemblies that we learn to become citizens. That's what we're doing here.
No, I'm sorry, but no. Those assemblies in permanence create confusion and division amongst us. This is the proof. Especially when they're manipulated by troublemakers like you, Jonas.
Coupigny, you're speaking to a commissioner of the revolution.
I say it's you who are fomenting division. At first, by backing the party of the king on that glorious day of August the 10th. And then, by coldly speculating on the misery of the people.
That's enough.
No, I won't stop now. The behavior of Citizen Coupigny is not that of a patriot. Citizen Coupigny, I denounce you. Yes, I accuse you of treason and of behavior that's counter-revolutionary. And I demand that your civic papers be examined by the Committee of Revolution. And during this examination, I demand that you be held in the prison of the section.
Jonas!
No liberty for the enemies of liberty!
Wait!
No liberty for the enemies of liberty! No! Take him away!
You're making a mistake! No! You're making a mistake! This isn't right! This isn't right! No!
Don't do this! Have you gone crazy? Everyone! Have you gone mad or what?
This deep division between Republicans and former monarchists suddenly turns into a civil war when an armed rebellion breaks out in the west of the country, in Vendée, in spring 1793. The Vendéan countryside is rising up in a refusal to mobilize 300,000 men from all over the country, as ordered by the convention. But the roots of the conflict lie in the religiosity of very poor farmers who think that the revolution has deprived them of their church. This anger is used by the royalist officers to turn a peasant Jacques into a political clash between, on one side, the royalists and refractory Catholics, and on the other, the republicans. The whites, color of the monarchy, against the blues, color of the revolution in arms. Now the republicans will have to fight both on the external front as well as the distressing internal front, calling on volunteers like Jean, who has decided to go fight.
So handsome. Wait. Here. I'll be with you. Hurry up. Go now. Go on.
The gift you are offering is your youth, your enthusiasm, and your vital spirits. There's no finer gift you can offer the homeland. You're leaving to fight against the enemies of the revolution, whether from the outside with that damn King of Prussia, or the domestic ones in Vendée, with those aristocrats who want to destroy everything we built over 4 years. Don't be afraid. Never forget that what you're doing in all our names. We're proud of you. Give us liberty or death!
Give us liberty or death!
Long live the revolution!
Long live the revolution!
Long live the Republic!
As volunteers troop off to defend the Republic on all fronts, the Parisian sections are soon disoriented, won over by exhaustion and doubt, as if the revolutionaries were gradually losing faith in the future.
I know that it's difficult and that doubt is growing in the neighborhood, but this is no time to waver. You just can't imagine how many people want us to fail. The Republic must defend itself and give itself the means of its ambitions. The government stated it's revolutionary till the peace. And you know what that means? That there's no more constitution until we eliminate every enemy, outside and inside.
Faced with dangers on all sides, on April 6, 1793, the National Convention establishes a Committee of Public Safety. 12 men, renewed monthly from among the deputies, to take charge of the country's destiny. The conflict between the Girondins and the Montagnards is increasingly violent. To weaken and marginalize the Montagnards, the Girondin deputies tried to indict before the Revolutionary Tribunal their fiercest adversary, most radical of the Montagnard deputies, journalist Jean-Paul Marat.
The sans-culottes of Paris were mad at the Girondins for their cowardice when we put the king on trial and wanted their removal. And as I was on the side of the sans-culottes, the Girondins had the temerity to accuse me before the tribunal of the revolution. But of course I won. And the sans-culottes carried me out in triumph.
When thousands of sans-culottes acclaim Marat, the Girondin deputies see the situation turn dangerously against them. Now, nothing can hold back the Parisians' anger.
And then everything shifted. 35 sections of Paris out of 48 asked for the official removal of the Girondin deputies considered the most important. I went directly to the Paris Insurrectional Commune, where I mobilized them, saying, "Arise, sovereign people of France. Go now to the convention with your requirements and refuse to leave there until you have obtained satisfaction."
On June 2nd, 1793, at Marat's call, the Paris sections, supported by several battalions of the Parisian Guard, blockade the assembly. Under threat of cannon fire, the deputies cannot leave the room until they agree to the sans-culotte demands. The parliamentarians end up voting for the arrest of the 29 main Girondin deputies. In this month of June 1793, the citizens of Paris are finally victorious. And in an unprecedented burst of progressive fervor, the Assembly adopts a new declaration of the rights of man and of the citizen. A declaration that recognizes the rights of the French men to resist oppression and which promises assistance and education for all. So, to defend these new rights, the sans-culottes will not hesitate to wage a fierce fight in every quarter of Paris. There is no room for those who challenge the Republic.
Now we worship trees and rivers. And these statues in plaster, we pray to reason. Have we all gone haywire? And I'm sure you agree that it's bullshit, this cult of reason. And the Supreme Being, why can't we call him God like everyone else?
Be careful what you say. You've drunk too much.
Nah, I haven't drunk much. Not a drop, and I know what I say. Instead of an old-fashioned mass, they put on a carnival. They destroy statues. They celebrate martyrs that I'll never believe in.
Shut up, Barbizon.
What is it? What's the matter? You think you scare me? Is that it? I've known you way too long.
You want to go home now, Barbizon?
And now you want to depose
Be
God?
quiet,
Is that
Barbizon.
it? No, I won't be quiet. You and your friends believe that you've changed things, that right? But nothing has changed. Everything's worse. Before we had one tyrant, the king. And nowadays we have thousands of tyrants of your sort who all want to wear the crown.
Stop, Barbizon.
The Republic is now engaged in a merciless struggle. The watchword is liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. But to the sans-culotte despair, first victim of this confrontation is the man they called friend of the people, Jean-Paul Marat. The spearhead of the People's Revolution was murdered in his bathtub by a young woman close to the Girondins, Charlotte Corday. A scene which, under the brush of Montagnard painter David, shows the martyrdom of an apostle of freedom, whose body becomes the murdered body of the people. Henceforth, revolutionaries will be terrible with their enemies. In Vendée, the Committee of Public Safety sets extreme targets for its generals. This province must be destroyed and burnt, and its inhabitants deported if necessary. The Royal and Catholic Army is soon crushed. 300,000 Vendéans lose their lives, several thousand of whom are drowned in the Loire, in Nantes, by a hot-headed general. When monarchists seize control of the city of Lyon, the National Convention reacts with lightning speed. It sends Joseph Fouché with particularly explicit instructions. The inhabitants of Lyon will be disarmed. The city of Lyon will be destroyed. The name of Lyon will be erased from the list of cities of the Republic. Fouché subjugates the city and brings before a makeshift court more than 2,000 Lyonnais who are immediately executed by collective shooting. A disaster that chills the nation. Another disaster is the thousands of Republican soldiers who will not return from the war, like Jean-Jean, son of Gabriel, who did not survive his dreams of glory.
May the Supreme Being welcome to his bosom the soul of Jean-Nicolas Pechloche, known as Jean-Jean, who died on the field of honor. O Lord, I turn to you. By your presence, drive away obscurity and evil, keep them from me. grant me peace, sparing me from anguish and fear and sorrow. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The fight against the old monarchy is relentless. It is now the turn of the former Queen Marie Antoinette of Austria, imprisoned in the Conciergerie awaiting trial for collusion with the enemy. Marie Antoinette is sentenced and led to the gallows on October 16th, 1793. The Montagnards, running the country, are now engaged in a war of freedom versus tyranny. In turn, the Girondin deputies are indicted, several days after Marie Antoinette. 21 of them are presented before the Revolutionary Tribunal, charged with treason and sentenced to death. They are guillotined in the name of the one and indivisible Republic on October 31st, soon to be followed by others accused of collusion, including Deputy Jean-Paul Rabot-Saint-Étienne. And in a deadly acceleration, a fratricidal war is sparked at the heart of the Montagnards. Doubt eats away at minds. A first group around Camille Desmoulins and Jacques Danton is troubled by the rise in arrests by the local committees. Nicknamed the Indulgents, they believe too much blood has flowed already. They must put an end to this abuse, for which they blame Robespierre.
The Romans publicly disputed public affairs. But when the enemy was at the gates of Rome, they put aside their differences and agreed to stop fighting each other. Here, the enemy is at our gates, but all we do is to destroy each other.
When Robespierre demanded the burning of all the copies of my newspaper, the Vieux Cordelier, it became clear that all my ideals of 1789 had vanished once and for all. What Robespierre was unable to understand was that I delivered in the journal an ardent cry, same as I've always done since the beginning of the revolution. Open the prisons and liberate those 200,000 citizens that you want to call suspect. That's what I cried to Robespierre and to the Committee of Public Safety.
A second group, known as the Exaggerators, wants to pick up the torch left lying on the ground by Marat. They and journalist Jacques Hébert dream of a new people's insurrection to clean up the Republic once and for all. And they think Robespierre doesn't go far enough. But for the Committee of Public Safety, caught between these two challenges, all this plays into the hands of the counter-revolutionaries. The committee's reaction will be radical.
The ultra-revolutionaries like Hébert and the less-than-revolutionaries like Desmoulins get along like a band of thieves in a forest. Desmoulins is just the spokesman of a faction of scoundrels who take advantage of his quill to spread their poison with far more audacity. In spite of it all, I warned Camille that he should end his relationship with Danton. I told him to be more moderate in his writing, but he did not want to listen. And anyway, now it's too late.
First, Jacques-René Hébert and 18 other exaggerators are sentenced to death on March 24, 1794, for attempted insurrection. Then comes the turn of the Indulgents. Camille Desmoulins and Jacques Danton led to the scaffold just days later, April 5th, 1794, accused of colluding with enemies of the revolution. With the murder of Marat, then the deaths of Danton and Desmoulins, the revolution is crushing all of its heroes.
Soldier, open the door!
And in a headlong rush that will prove fatal, the Committee of Public Safety transforms the Revolutionary Tribunal into that of the Reign of Terror, to have done with the enemies of the revolution. Now, there are only two possible verdicts: innocence or death.
through this holy anointing, may the Lord...
In the Saint-Marcel quarter, as everywhere in Paris, the executions mount. Joseph Barbizon is sentenced to death by the Tribunal of the Terror. In just a few weeks, more than 1,400 people are guillotined, and Paris soon starts to feel scaffold nausea. Suddenly, the deputies are paralyzed by fear of being the next name on the list of the sentenced. This terror must be ended, and if possible, the people tossed a sacrificial culprit. So, in this last act of the revolutionary tragedy, on July 27, 1794, the members of the Committee of Public Safety, who supported Robespierre, turn against him. To cries of "Down with the tyrant," a coalition of deputies prevents Robespierre from taking the stand at the convention, and he is immediately arrested.
We've got to go there. It's time to move.
In the sections, news of the arrest reverberates like a declaration of war. The convention has just challenged the Paris Commune. In the Gobelin, the time has come to choose between the two competing powers. There can only be one winner.
What's happened?
Robespierre and 4 other Montagnard deputies were arrested.
That's why they're ringing the call to arms?
Yeah. The Commune of Paris thinks the convention is responsible for all the arrests. They're calling for an insurrection.
We've waited long enough. We've waited too long. I propose that we send a battalion of the section to the Place de Grève to defend the Commune of Paris.
No. I refuse to choose between the Commune and the Convention until we know exactly what's going on.
I propose we put to a vote the dispatch of a battalion which will defend the Commune. Who's in favor?
I'm in favor. Of
Please,
course I'm in
one
favor.
moment. I propose an amendment worded, this battalion will go to the Place de Grève, but it won't deploy so long as we've not sent it instructions. Who's in favor?
Now that's a good idea.
In actual fact, Robespierre and his supporters, like young Saint-Just, were released by the Commune soldiers and took refuge in the Hôtel de Ville. There, his friends urge Robespierre to appeal to the people. But he hesitates, he prevaricates, allowing confusion to reign in the sections.
All's good. We've had confirmation that Robespierre's been freed.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Citizens! Robespierre has been freed. He's safe and sound. And the other deputies have also been freed.
You see?
No, you don't have a clue. They're taking away all our conquests, and you're for sitting around here not doing anything.
No, I won't move.
Bunch of imbeciles. You're all going to be massacred!
For Robespierre, it is now too late. There will be no insurrection. Only 16 battalions out of 48 are massed in front of the Hôtel de Ville, and they will not be ordered to defend the Commune. And when Robespierre resigns himself to appealing to the people, the battalions have long since left the Place de Grève, and the convention has already dispatched a detachment of the National Guard to dispense with the hero of the Parisian sections. The clash is violent. And in the early hours of July 28th, Robespierre, his jaw wounded, Saint-Just and their supporters are led to the gallows and guillotined, like hundreds of their fellows in the weeks to follow. In a few hours, Paris and its popular sections are brought to heel.
Let go of me.
Political normalization is underway.
Join the insurrection.
Let him go!
Gabrielle!
Stop it! You've got no right! It was his order that the battalion stand in front of the Commune, so they consider him guilty, but he's not. It's not his fault.
He's
He
not
can't be
guilty. We
He's
know it.
not
Don't
guilty.
worry. We know he's not
He can't
guilty.
be guilty.
Come, let's see what we can do.
The epilogue to this story takes place in May 1795, when the Convention Hall is invaded one last time. But this gallant last stand comes to naught. With an irony only history can provide, the sans-culotte revolutionary adventure ends exactly where it began. The People's Revolution had begun one day in April 1789 by an insurrection in the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. And that's where it ends in May 1795, when the same quarter is surrounded by battalions of the National Guard. After particularly violent skirmishes, all of the Faubourg's residents are disarmed. The sans-culotte hopes of equality are well and truly over. Since the storming of the Bastille in 1789, many hopes have been dashed and many lives shattered. But the French people were the first to dream up a declaration of the rights of man and the citizen. They managed to invent the Republic, and they sowed in people's minds the seeds of a democratic fight that has only just begun.
Gabrielle.
Athanase.
I love you, I love you, I love you. What are you doing here? Huh?
Stop it. You would have been guillotined if Justin hadn't been there.
Luckily, there were reasonable men who knew I was still responsible. That's why your life was spared. But what I did was for Gabrielle. And for the baby.
What about Jonas? Do you know what happened to him?
They say that he went down in battle, not without taking 8 guards with him.
Others say he's hiding in the Faubourg Saint-Marcel, protected by a few supporters.
Others even say he went to the West Indies to become a pirate. And God knows what else.
Come on.
The dreams of the citizens of 1789 not only shaped the destiny of the French people, but would also inspire the world, which would never be the same after the French Revolution.